The air on Golgotha didn't smell like history. It smelled like iron. It smelled like sweat, dried blood, and the sour reek of cheap wine mixed with the dust of an execution site. The sky wasn't just dark. It was a bruised, suffocating purple that seemed to press down on the lungs of the dying. 3 crosses cut the horizon, silhouettes of absolute agony. On the left, a man twisting in rage, using his final breaths to mock. On the right, a man broken by the weight of his own crimes. And in the center, a figure who had become the focal point of the entire Roman Empire's cruelty. This is a place of endings. It is a slaughterhouse designed by the state, but amidst the screaming muscles and the jeering crowd, a quiet, almost impossible conversation begins, a dialogue that will ripple through 2,000 years of theology. The criminal on the right, his body spasming against the wood, turns his head. Through the haze of pain, he looks at the man in the center. He doesn't see a victim. He doesn't see a failed prophet. Against all logic, he sees a king. He gasps out a request that sounds insane given the circumstances. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus, fighting for every single intake of air, turns and offers an answer that has ignited a theological war for 20 centuries. He says, "Assuredly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." It sounds simple, it sounds beautiful, but that sentence contains a trap, a mystery. What did today actually mean? Was it a promise of instant teleportation to heaven the moment his heart stopped? Or is it possible that a single tiny grammatical error in our modern Bibles has completely distorted Jesus' final promise? We are about to open a cold case file on the most famous deathbed conversation in history. To truly understand the stakes here, we have to zoom into the raw footage of the event. Luke's gospel gives us the brutal transcript. The scene is chaos. You have religious leaders, soldiers, and passers-by forming a chorus of mockery. They are shouting, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he is the Christ." It's a cacophony of rejection. Even the criminal on the left joins in, screaming, "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." It is the human race at its absolute worst, kicking a man while he is down. But then the shift happens. The other criminal, known to history as Dismas, snaps. He rebukes his partner, and listen to the clarity in his voice. He says, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we are receiving the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Unpack that for a second. This isn't just a plea for help. It is arguably the most astute theological statement in the entire New Testament, and it comes from a dying thug. In seconds, he acknowledges the justice of God, confesses his own sin without making excuses, and declares the absolute innocence of Jesus. And then he goes further. He looks at a man who is naked, bleeding, and dying, and he calls him a king. "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He is betting his eternity on the idea that death is not the end for the man next to him. He is the first person to believe in the resurrection before it even happens. And Jesus responds not with a sermon, not with a ritual, but with a promise. "Assuredly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." Now, here is where the detective work begins. The entire meaning of this promise hinges on a punctuation mark that you cannot see in the original text. Why? Because it wasn't there. When Luke wrote this gospel, he wrote in Koine Greek using a style called scriptio continua. Imagine a text with no spaces, no lowercase letters, and absolutely zero punctuation. Just a long stream of letters running across the page. There were no commas. There were no periods. The system of punctuation we use today wasn't even standard in biblical manuscripts until around the 9th century AD. This means that for hundreds of years, the placement of the comma, the pause in the sentence, was an interpretive choice made by scribes, and that choice changes everything. Option A is what you see in the New King James Version or the NIV. The translators place the comma before the word today. It reads, "Assuredly I say to you, comma, today you will be with me in paradise." In this version, today modifies the verb to be. It tells us when the thief will arrive in heaven. It is immediate, it is instant. Before the sun sets, he will be in glory. But look at option B. What if the scribe puts the comma after the word today? The sentence transforms. "Assuredly I say to you today, comma, you will be with me in paradise." Suddenly, today isn't about when the thief arrives. It's about when Jesus is speaking. It becomes a solemn oath. Jesus is saying, "I am telling you right now, on this dark day, that you will be with me." The timing of the arrival is left open. It could be in 3 days. It could be in 2,000 years. This isn't just grammar. These are two completely different maps of the afterlife. Behind door number 1 is immediate entry into heaven. Behind door number 2 is a waiting room, a soul sleep, or a future resurrection. Most of the Protestant and evangelical world rallies behind the immediate entry theory. It's the most natural reading of the English text. The argument here is theological dynamite. The thief had no time for baptism. He couldn't join a church. He couldn't tithe. He couldn't do a single good work to offset his lifetime of crime. All he had was a desperate, dying faith. If Jesus took him to paradise that very day, it proves that salvation is 100% grace. It is the ultimate "it is finished" moment. Supporters of this view look at the word paradisos. It's a Persian loan word meaning a walled garden or a royal park. In the New Testament, Paul talks about being caught up to the third heaven and paradise as if they are the same place. In Revelation, the tree of life is in the paradise of God. So the logic goes, paradise equals heaven. Jesus promised the thief he would be there today. Therefore, when a believer dies, they are absent from the body and present with the Lord. No stopovers, no layovers, direct flight. But hold on, there is a massive plot hole in this theory, and it comes from the mouth of Jesus himself. 3 days later, Sunday morning, Mary Magdalene is at the tomb. She sees the resurrected Jesus and rushes to cling to him, and Jesus stops her. He says in John 20:17, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father." Do you see the contradiction? If Jesus promised the thief on Friday, "Today you will be with me in paradise," and paradise is where God the Father lives, then how can Jesus say on Sunday, "I have not yet ascended to the Father"? He can't be in two places at once. If he was in the grave for 3 days, he wasn't in heaven. This is the smoking gun for the future event theorists. They argue that the comma must go after today to save biblical consistency. "I tell you today, you will be with me." This fixes the timeline. Jesus makes the promise on Friday, goes to the grave or Sheol, Hades, for 3 days, rises, and then eventually ascends. The thief's salvation is guaranteed, but his entry into the final heaven happens later, perhaps at the general resurrection. There is a third option, a sort of middle path that ancient theologians like Tertullian played with. It involves the geography of the underworld. In the ancient mindset, Sheol, or Hades, was the realm of the dead. But it wasn't all bad. There was a section for the wicked and a section for the righteous, often called Abraham's bosom. It is possible that paradise referred to this temporary waiting room of peace. So, on Friday, Jesus and the thief descended together into this righteous part of Hades. Then, after the resurrection, Jesus ascends and leads all those captive souls up to the true heaven. This creates a consistent timeline where today means today, but ascended to the Father still hasn't happened yet. Then you have the Catholic perspective, which adds another layer of depth regarding purification. You might ask, wait, doesn't the thief skipping purgatory contradict Catholic teaching? Not necessarily. The Catechism teaches that purgatory is for those who die in grace but are still imperfectly purified. But God is not bound by his own systems. The Catholic view often suggests that the thief's act was so profound, a baptism of desire, or even a type of martyrdom, that it served as his complete purification. Think about it. He confessed Christ while Christ was being slaughtered. That level of faith, combined with the physical agony of his own crucifixion, united with Jesus's, burned away the temporal punishment of his sin. In a singular moment of perfect contrition, he was made ready for the beatific vision. It's the exception that proves the rule of God's overwhelming mercy. We have walked through the grammar wars, the timeline contradictions, and the theological loopholes. We have analyzed the comma until it dissolved. But we have to be careful not to miss the forest for the trees. Because whether the thief arrived in paradise at 3 p.m. that Friday, or whether he is sleeping in peace waiting for the trumpet to sound, the core reality remains unchanged. The story isn't about the clock. It's about the heart. Look at the data. A man with a lifetime of wreckage behind him. A man with zero leverage. A man who, by all societal standards, should be thrown in the trash. He turns his head, he asks, and he is received. The scandal of this text isn't the punctuation, it's the grace. It is the shocking revelation that the distance between a guilty sinner and the presence of God is not a lifetime of good behavior. It is the width of a cross. The emphasis of Jesus' promise wasn't on the today, it was on the with me. That is the definition of paradise. It isn't a place with gold streets and harps. It is simply being where he is. The thief on the cross proves that it is never too late. There is no resume required. The comma might move, but the promise stands like a stone. You will be with me.